welcome back to my channel. I'm Kelly Kessler. I help high achieving women recognize and heal from dysfunctional patterns of self abandonment. And that is exactly what we're talking about today. I'm going to be sharing with you 7 subtle signs that you may be self abandoning and you may not even realize it. But before we get started, let's talk about what is self abandonment. What does that actually look like? So, self abandonment is any time that you are suppressing, ignoring, or silencing your own needs and desires. And often the reason why many people do this is to get approval from others, seek out validation from others, or create a sense of safety in their life when they don't feel safe overall. And this will make more sense as I get into some of the examples. But self abandonment is one of those things that we all kind of do on some basis. Some of our jobs require us to quiet some of the aspects of ourselves so that we can actually perform the job, to be professional. And some things are just required of us, when we're speaking to our kids or we're in a certain setting. And that is going to be part of life. The problem where it comes in with self abandonment is when it becomes a very chronic issue where you are truly suppressing the root of who you are. You feel like you are not living in the authentic realm of who you actually are, and you are kind of losing yourself in the process. You may feel very disconnected from yourself. You're trying to put on all the fronts and trying to be the things for everybody else and trying to be the go-to person that when it comes down to it and you're in a quiet moment, you are kind of wondering what you want from life or maybe have not even contemplated it. So when self-abandonment becomes a problem is when it is consuming your life and other things are constantly taking priority over what you want for your life. It's almost like you have a story and we all have a story. Every one of us is creating a story in our life, but you're almost allowing others to write the chapters in your story rather than you being the director of your story. And that is when self-abandonment becomes very costly because we start to lose the essence of ourselves. So I want to share 7 subtle signs that you may be self-abandoning. And so start to take note as I go through these, how many of these resonate with you and you've maybe done this in your own life. I know for sure I have done all 7 in my life. And it was only till I started recognizing my own self-worth and started to speak up for myself and started to realize that I am worthy of more that I started to see all the things that I have been doing. I literally lived most of my life with not even realizing that I was doing most of these. And most of these were happening while I was high functioning. I was achieving. You would not even notice that things were going on behind the scenes. So that's why these are so sneaky. So the first one is saying you're fine when you're not fine. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I did this. When be like, oh, someone would ask me, hey, what's going on? I'd be like, nothing, I'm fine. But I knew deep down I am not okay. And I would even do this with people close to me. I did this with my husband. I can't tell you how many times, especially in the beginning of our relationship. He'd ask me knowing that something was wrong because you could see it on my face. And I would just say, I'm fine. And I would just silence myself instead of feeling like I have permission to say, you know what, in this moment, I'm not doing okay. I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. But instead, I would say I'm fine. I would feel like inside that I can figure this out. I don't need anybody's help. And I'll just kind of get past this so that I can get back to doing the things and being productive and just being functional again. So saying you're fine when you're not fine becomes this big discrepancy between what's actually coming out of your mouth and what you're feeling. And when there's a big discrepancy there, it can create this anxiety within your system. So that's one subtle sign that you're saying you're fine when you're not fine. Number 2, and I just touched on it, was not accepting help. So subtle signs of abandoning yourself is knowing that your life would probably be easier if you accepted some help, but refusing to do it. Are you that overly independent person who refuses to delegate or accept any kind of help in your life because you're kind of say to yourself, it's just easier if I do it. I can get it done quicker. I know it'll be done right. And you just do the thing. That was me for a long time too. I would just take on more than I knew I could probably handle, but I would just tell myself I can handle this. I can get through this. I'll figure it out. I'll do the dishes, I'll do the laundry, I'll work the 3 jobs, and I'll figure out a way to make it work. And I'll take care of the kids in some way, and I'll just do all the things. Even though there was help available, I would deny the help because deep down, I almost felt like it would be a vulnerability or that I wasn't as strong as I felt like I should be. And so that actually was abandoning myself because I was putting myself through the ringer and running on fumes to get it all done when I could have easily said yes to the help that was being offered. Number 3 is putting off activities that bring you joy and elevate your energy. So this can look like a lot of different things. It can look like you really want to go for a walk because it's a nice sunny day outside, but you have to do the laundry, the dishes. You have to make the lunches for tomorrow. You have to go through the mail, and you'll figure out a time tomorrow to get done. There's just no time right now. And while it is realistic that there are all these things to do, if you are not carving out just some time to actually do things that bring you joy and elevate your energy, it's actually abandoning yourself. You're trying to push and force yourself to do all the things without charging your battery. It's like forcing your phone to work when it's blinking red and it's alerting you of 10% battery, and you're like, you can do no more. I know you can. I'll plug you in tomorrow and we'll figure it out, but I know you can do more. It just doesn't work like that, and it doesn't work like that for us either. So if there's something that elevates your energy, makes you feel good, you enjoy, give yourself permission to do that, even if it's for 5 minutes. Some things that I do is just get outside. I'll take off my socks and shoes and just stand in the grass. I get some sunshine. I'll go outside and just take some deep breaths. It's those little activities that I know make me feel good that helps elevate my energy. And this was something I denied myself for a long time, and have learned that this is very important, that we need these little moments throughout the day to recharge and elevate our energy. And the biggest thing is that we need to give ourselves permission to take those. Number 4 is setting and honoring boundaries. This one can be a little difficult and a little challenging. This was something that was very foreign to me for so long. Like, what are boundaries? Like, what was that? What does that even mean in real life? Like, I knew the concept, but what does that actually look like? And this is something that if you are not setting and honoring boundaries, especially with people who drain your energy, you are actually abandoning yourself, because you maybe recognize that there's someone in your life that is just negative. They pull you down. They make you feel more doubtful of yourself, or they question everything, or they maybe just make you feel like crap. And you know that you want to limit your time with them. You know they're not good for you, but yet there's just something that feels like you can't say no to them, or you feel obligated to go spend time with them. And by doing that and not setting some kind of boundary to protect your own energy, you are actually compromising yourself and abandoning yourself. And so it is so incredibly crucial to set boundaries and honor those boundaries. And I'll have a podcast coming up on how to do that, to dive in a little bit deeper. But if you're not currently doing that, or you struggle with that, that is actually a subtle sign that you're abandoning yourself. Number 5 is saying yes when you actually want to say no. So how many times have you maybe been asked a favor by a neighbor or friend or someone at work, or your boss, and you're like, you feel that deep need to say yes, even though you're like, I don't want to say yes. I really just don't want to say yes. But you feel an obligation that you should say yes. And so you end up saying yes, even though deep down you really wanted to say no, because this is not something that you wanted to take on. It's not something you wanted to do, but you felt like you had to say yes. Again, there are circumstances you do have to say yes sometimes in your life, but if you find yourself always saying yes to people and pushing yourself to the limits and really struggling to ever say no to things, even if it's just busy work in your own life, it could just be saying yes to things in your own life, not even involving other people. It could be a lot of things that you just continually pile on your plate and you're not able to cut anything out. that is actually a subtle sign that you're abandoning yourself, because you are spreading yourself so thin. You are directing your energy and diluting your energy in many different realms. And when you say yes to everything, you are saying no to yourself. And that is huge, because you have essentially a finite resource of energy and time each day. And even though it may feel like you can do all the things and you can feel like a superhero, that you are able to navigate everything and multitask, at the end of the day, there's only so much of you to go around. And if you don't ever say no to things, you are only going to compromise your own health, your own mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and you're going to feel like you're on the go all the time. And that's when you create a sense of overwhelm in your life. That's when you start to create like this hyperdrive, lack of sleep, that you're burning the candle at both ends. And again, over time, that creates that lack of safety within yourself. And that is a subtle sign that you're abandoning yourself. So this can be a really tough one, but one that is very important. Start saying no to things that do not serve you, or to people that do not elevate your energy and make you feel good about yourself. Number 6 is not taking time for yourself. This one I was a big one for me for much of my life. I would never take time for myself. And when I did, I would feel guilty about it. And so this was a really challenging thing to do, because first of all, I would just say, I don't have time to take for myself. Like, there was a time I was working full time, driving an hour each way, taking care of my newborn son, building a house. And that is something I would repetitively say, is like, I don't even have time for myself. And by saying I do not have time for myself, no, I was never going to create time for myself, because I was cutting it off in my head before I could even say, how could I create some time for myself? How can I navigate taking even a minute here and there to center myself, take a breath? And so if you're not taking time for yourself, even if it's 5 minutes in the morning, that is a subtle sign that you're abandoning yourself. And finally, number 7 is not eating or drinking when you're hungry or thirsty. And so this, again, you may get through the day, and have you ever worked like a long day and you get home and you're like, oh my gosh, I drank like no water today. Or I didn't even eat. I just skipped my lunch break and I just worked through my lunch break and I'm starving. And that's probably a common occurrence. And I know I experienced that myself so many times, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I never drank today. And I'm like so thirsty. And I would do this over and over again. I'd be like, I'll drink tomorrow. I'll make sure I take a minute to like drink, or I'll get up from my desk and just make sure I get some food in me, so I don't just work through the day. But then it seems like every day would become the same pattern, that again, you're not eating and you're not drinking, but you are thirsty and you're hungry. And just suppressing those normal signs of your body saying, I need some sustenance, is abandoning yourself. And again, it can seem so small and just so minuscule that, yeah, you're thirsty, you're not drinking, but it is these chronic things that when you add them all together, the message you're telling yourself is that you're not worthy of your own time and energy, and that your needs are not as important as others' needs, and your desires are not as important as others' desires. And when you continually tell yourself these messages, how do you think your system reacts? Imagine if you told a child that you're not my priority. I see you're thirsty. I'll get to you when I get to you. Yeah, you're hungry. You're going to have to wait probably about 5 more hours before I get you a snack. Oh, you are really tired. Well, you just need to keep pushing through this. And whenever it's convenient for life to give you some time, you'll figure out how to get some time. Imagine how that child would feel. They would feel so neglected. And yet we do this to ourselves on a daily basis. We literally neglect ourselves and our own needs. And then we wonder why we get to the end of the day and we're completely exhausted. We feel like our mind is in a fog. We struggle to sleep. We are ruminating on everything that happened during the day. And we don't even question the behaviors that we put towards ourselves during that day, and that we literally suppressed and ignored our own needs. And when we do this day in and day out, year in and year out, that is when it becomes an issue. And what happens when we do abandon ourselves and we do suppress our own needs is that our nervous system does not feel safe. We start to create a lack of safety within our system, which is ironic because one of the very reasons we do this is to feel safe. And a lot of times we abandon ourselves at work because we are worried about our job. We do not want to lose our job. We absolutely need our job. So we will silence ourselves and do what our boss says because our job is important, because it creates safety in our life. So it can become this catch-22 in that we are creating safety in the short term by abandoning ourselves, but in the long term, we are actually creating an environment within our system that feels very unsafe. So it becomes a short-term gains for long-term compromises. And that is the challenge here. Because again, there are situations for sure that are very realistic. Yes, we all need to have an income. We need to have some kind of security. That is absolutely essential. And it's about navigating that where we can be able to acknowledge our own desires, our own needs, and not continually compromise that, and yet maintain some kind of relationship with our job that is functional. So it can be really challenging, but I'm going to give you some tips here and how to navigate that a little bit better. But this is the big thing, is that when we do self-abandon ourselves, we create an environment of lack of safety. And then our nervous system starts to go into a sympathetic response, which is a fight, flight, and freeze. This is when we start to get sick because our immunity gets compromised when we're in that state. This is why we can't think straight, because it actually impacts how our mind functions when we're in a fear, lack of safety state. It affects our hormones. It impacts our heart rate, our blood pressure elevates. It impacts our skin. It impacts our vision. Literally every system, every physical system, our muscles, our fascia, which is our connective tissue, tightens down. So we get into the really taut and tight posturing. So literally every system is impacted when this becomes a long-term thing. And our nervous system does not feel safe because we're not even honoring our own needs. So this is why some of these subtle signs that can be easily overlooked are so important to acknowledge. And so I do want to share with you something that's really important to start to do so that you can start to honor your needs and not self-abandon. And I want to make this abundantly clear that it is not a life overhaul in the way that all of a sudden you say yes to yourself and no to everything else, and then everything changes and it's butterflies and rainbows. It's not like that. The way to start honoring yourself is very small, subtle changes. And this is the only way to really move forward, is when you make these small changes that feel like, okay, maybe I could do that. Then you can start to build on that. So it's not about like, hey, your job makes you self-abandon. Okay, quit tomorrow. That's not a realistic expectation. It's not a realistic solution, because now you've created so much lack of safety in your system that everything's going to backfire. And then you're just creating a big turmoil in your life. And that's just not a realistic solution. But maybe down the line, when you feel like you're able to, and you create a vision to kind of remove yourself from that job, maybe that's realistic. But for right now, I want to give you the smallest steps to start to create some safety in your system where you do not have to self-abandon. And so some ways you can do that is that if you notice you're saying fine, so for the first one, and someone asks you, how are you doing? And you say fine, and maybe it's your spouse or whatever, maybe for that moment, just say, you know what? I'm not fine. I'm feeling something. And you may not even be able to identify what you're feeling, but just acknowledging that, like, I'm feeling something right now, and no, I'm not fine. That is a step in the right direction. You may not have anything beyond that, but just the mere fact that you're being authentic with how you're feeling, and that, like, I'm not fine. I don't know how I feel, but I feel something, is actually acknowledging and validating your own feelings, which is absolutely crucial. Another example would be like, if you are thirsty, start noticing that and give yourself just a little sip of water. So being aware of this is going to be really important. If you're hungry, have just a little snack and start to honor those signals that your body is telling you. And by honoring that, you will start to create a connection with your system because it's being heard again. And who doesn't want to feel seen and heard? I think everybody does. And so when you start to do that to your own system, you're going to create some safety within your system. If you struggle to take time out for yourself, maybe you can't carve out 2 hours in the day. Maybe you can't even carve out a half hour in the day, but can you figure out a way to just have 5 minutes to yourself? Even if it's 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes in the evening, and 1 minute during the middle of the day, that is better than the 0 that you may have been giving yourself. So create some kind of time for yourself, no matter how small it is, and then celebrate the fact that you actually took 5 minutes for yourself, and then build on that. So do the smallest thing you can to start doing that. Maybe you struggle with boundaries. Maybe it's the boundaries that you're noticing in your life. What's something that's maybe easier to say no to? So maybe it's something after work. Your coworkers are going out for drinks and you really just want to go home and relax, but you feel pressured. Maybe that's the no that you start to say no to. Maybe it is just something your neighbor asked you to do as a favor and you're like, I just can't right now. No. So start with something that feels maybe not so cringeworthy. Maybe it's not cutting people out or setting big boundaries with people. Start with something that's maybe smaller and a little bit more manageable, and then you can build on that. And then another one, when you're putting off activities that bring you joy, again, if you're taking that 5 minutes for yourself, just start to ask yourself, like, what do I enjoy? What do I actually enjoy? And this can be a really hard question to answer because sometimes when you're so disconnected from yourself, it's hard to even know what you enjoy. I mean, I remember a time in my life, someone asked me what I do for fun, and I'm like, I have no idea. I work. I don't even know. Like, I literally couldn't answer that at the time. So I know how hard it can be to even recognize what brings you joy, but approach it with some curiosity. Think about it. Like, what like makes me kind of smile inside? What's something that like I enjoy? And maybe it's just reading a book, or maybe it's just writing or going for a walk, but start to explore that and then make a little list of things that you bring you joy so that when you have 2 minutes, now you go right to that list and be like, oh, okay, here's something I can do. Because when it's written and it's planned out, you're much more likely to actually do it. And then now you're starting to put in these little things throughout your day that are going to elevate your energy and be the plug that you need to bring your battery back up. So just to recap, I want to share with you again the 7 subtle signs that you may be self-abandoning. So number 1 is saying you're fine when you're not fine. Number 2 is not accepting help. Number 3 is putting off activities that bring you joy or elevate your energy. Number 4 is not setting or honoring boundaries. Number 5 is saying yes when you really want to say no. Number 6 is not taking time for yourself. And number 7 is not eating or drinking when you are thirsty and hungry. So I hope this helps to just see things a little bit differently and maybe recognize some of these patterns that you have in your life. And if you're wondering if you are someone who is self-abandoning, I actually do have a free quiz that you can get in the show notes and take it to see maybe where you are self-abandoning and what aspects are there. And then I also have a lot of great free resources so that you can start to honor yourself, take care of yourself, and move yourself in a different direction. So definitely check that out in the show notes. And also, I would love to hear from you. If this resonated with you, if you were saying, yes, I do that to any of these, reach out. I would love to hear what really resonated with you and what maybe you recognized in your life that you never even thought of before. So you can reach me at Dr. Kelly Kessler on all social platforms or at my website at optimalyouhealthandwellness.com. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode. And I really hope it helped you to see some of the patterns in your life and know that you can start to change your life and transform your system and feel a sense of safety within yourself with just a small step in this very moment. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.